Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 179 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. I'd like to once again shout out this month's patrons. I truly appreciate every single one of you. Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lillian Sam Breen, Jesse Clark, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. And if you want to join in with helping the show out, it's just $1 per month, and that gets you this monthly shoutout, as well as audio outtakes and full scripts of every written show. We're continuing the lesser-known X-Men series, wrapping up the 90s era, and we've reached Joseph, who first appeared in X-Men number 46 in September of 1995, written by Scott Lobdell with art by Roger Cruz. Now, Joseph is an interesting case because he's actually the clone of a very well-known mutant, Eric Lehnsherr, aka Magneto. When Magneto's mind was basically turned off by Professor X, making him catatonic, a mutant named Astra, who claims to be Magneto's first recruit into the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, though she left him before the team debuted, rehabilitated the mindless Magneto, and at the same time created a clone of him that she intended to control. That clone somehow escaped Astra's Guatemala lab and was found in a feverish state by a group of kids living at a nearby orphanage. The nun running the orphanage nursed him back to health, although he had no memories. It was this Sister Maria de la Hoya who named the clone Joseph. Sister Maria believed the clone to somehow be Magneto himself, despite being many years younger than the infamous mutant. Dialogue states that Joseph appeared to be in his 20s, while Magneto would be in at least his late 50s at this point, since he's known to have memories of World War II. Sister Maria and the children were captured by criminals while Joseph was still staying at the orphanage, and in his rescue of them, he killed the captors. His actions so horrified the children that Joseph decided that he had to leave. Maria pointed him towards the X-Men, and Joseph went to New York to request their help. Like Maria, the X-Men believed this to be an amnesiac Magneto that had been somehow de-aged. Not the first time this had happened to him. And while not quite trusting him, they did allow him to join the team, which occurred in Uncanny X-Men number 338. He and Rogue grew quite close to one another. Rogue and Magneto have been romantically involved in various stories, as his magnetic fields allow him to touch Rogue without her actually draining his power. And after meeting Magneto's acolytes, Joseph started to believe he was actually Magneto himself. However, the true Magneto did reappear, and when he and the rest of the X-Men confronted Magneto, Joseph sacrificed himself to stop the mutant terrorist from his plans to destroy humanity. Astra brought Joseph back later, along with deformed clones of the other Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, Quicksilver, Toad, Scarlet Witch, and Blob, and this time succeeded at turning him to her side. Joseph framed Magneto, who at the time was working with the X-Men, for the murder of the participants of a mutant hate rally. Magneto was able to track Joseph down and fought him and his mutated brotherhood. Joseph and Astra were captured and taken back to the X-Brig, a jail on the mutant island of Utopia near San Francisco. Joseph was released when Danger, a sentient danger room who hated the X-Men, we'll talk more about her in another episode, released all the prisoners in the X-Brig. Pretending to be Magneto once again, he recruited a new brotherhood. His cover was blown when he fought the X-Men. While he was held down by Juggernaut and Cyclops was lecturing him, Joseph was decapitated by Quanon. You may remember her from last episode, who considered Joseph too great a threat to live. Since then, Joseph reappeared again, showing up at Wanda Maximoff's door after the Hellfire Gala and Orchis branding all mutants as wanted terrorists. While the cause of his resurrection was at first unknown, it was revealed that an alchemist named Hexfinder had brought the clone back to life and sent him to gain Wanda's trust, in order to bring her guard down enough for Hexfinder to assassinate her. But Joseph once again took a heroic turn and sacrificed himself, thwarting the assassin's plans. This was in the most recent Scarlet Witch ongoing series, Volume 3 from 2023/24, so he hasn't been seen again, but it's hard to keep a good clone down, so I'm sure he'll be back eventually. The next batch of X-Men were all recruited in the same issue, X-Men number 70, released in December of 1997. We'll start with Dr. Cecilia Reyes, created by Scott Lobdell and Carlos Pacheco. Cecilia was already a trauma surgeon in the South Bronx when her mutant powers activated. Professor Xavier reached out to her and offered her a place in the X-Men at the time, but she turned it down, preferring to keep her mutant status secret and continue her work as a doctor. However, 3 years later, during the Operation Zero Tolerance story, some of which was adapted in the recent X-Men 97 cartoon, a Prime Sentinel attacked Dr. Reyes at the hospital she was working at. Iceman arrived in time to save her life, but now that her secret was out, she was fired from the hospital. Dr. Reyes reluctantly joined the X-Men, although she was still mostly uncomfortable out in the field. Her mutant ability to create force fields that protected her from physical harm kept her safe, but the fact that she still felt pain when the force fields were hit made it a much less useful power in combat compared to other invulnerable characters. Although eventually she was able to learn to use those force fields offensively by forming them into spikes or hammers. But in her heart, she will always be a doctor first. After a brief tenure with the X-Men, followed by a stint in a mutant concentration camp that she eventually escaped, Cecilia was found working as an unlicensed doctor in New York City. Then eventually returned to the X-Men fold when they founded the mutant island of Utopia, working as a physician there. She spent some time working in various field teams between the Utopia and Krakoa eras of the X-Men, but once again returned to her primary work as a doctor on the mutant nation of Krakoa, specializing in mutant physiology. Unfortunately, I could not find a specific answer to where she is post-Hellfire Gala, but I'm sure that some mutant will need a doctor in the future, and Cecilia will be there to answer the call. Next, let's talk about arguably the most disgusting of the X-Men, Maggott. First seen in Uncanny X-Men number 345, written by Scott Lobdell with art by Joe Madureira. Like other characters from a specific region, like Rogue, Gambit, and Cannonball, his dialogue is written with a strong accent and local words and phrases peppered in. Born in South Africa during the apartheid era, Japheth, last name still not given as of this recording, was in nearly constant pain growing up, with his stomach bothering him for as yet unknown reasons. Doctors suggested it was cancer, though his family couldn't afford the tests necessary to determine that for sure, nor do anything about it if it were. So, at 12 years old, Japheth decided to take his parents' Jeep, drive out into the desert until the car ran out of gas, and let himself die to spare his family further suffering. Unfortunately, his brother Daniel had been sleeping in the back of the Jeep when he took it, and didn't wake up until it was too late. The pair were now trapped in the middle of an unforgiving desert with no easy way back. By pure luck, Magneto came upon the boys, and he was able to help Japheth finally discover the true source of the pain inside, releasing the 2 sentient slugs inside his abdomen. Those slugs, which he eventually named Eenie and Meanie, are Japheth's digestive system, and need to burst out of his stomach and return back into Japheth's body. They close and heal the entryway both upon leaving and upon returning. When fed by these creatures, Japheth's skin turns blue, and he's stronger and more durable than most. In addition to that, Maggott, as he now goes by, also has the ability of psychometry, allowing him to know what has happened recently in his present location. Also, the fact that there are 3 minds within his body disrupts any psychics who try to unwillingly enter his mind. When the young Japheth, Daniel, and Magneto returned to the boys' home, they found it had been attacked by Afrikaners. White South Africans attacking black South Africans, looking to quell any apartheid resistance, even where there was none. Who had killed Japheth's older brother, Lot. Japheth's father, normally a peaceful man, had gone into town looking for revenge, and Japheth and Magneto followed, where Magneto saved Japheth's father at the boy's request, but did so by brutally murdering the Afrikaners, which repelled the peace-loving boy, and so he refused to join Magneto's cause. Years later, Maggott tracked down Joseph, believing him to be Magneto, and in doing so ran into the X-Men, which Joseph was now a part of, as they were fighting the actual Magneto. He helped the team out in that fight, and was soon welcomed as part of the team, after Eenie was able to digest a nanotech bomb that had just been removed from Cyclops. Soon after he joined the team, evidence pointed to Eenie and Meanie murdering and eating several humans in the nearby town of Salem Center. It turned out to be a group of demons called the Rutai, who happened to bear a strong resemblance to Eenie and Meanie. However, any connection between the two has not been explored in the comics at this point. After an adventure fighting against the Shadow King, Maggott was briefly demoted to the junior squad known as Generation X, but left the team after just a couple of issues to track down a game hunter known as Slaughter, who had tried to hunt and kill Eenie and Meanie. At some point after that, Maggott was captured by Weapon X and sent to the same concentration camp that Dr. Cecilia Reyes had been confined to, although he was not as lucky as she was, and was among the first to be executed. Before his death, Maggott gave Eenie to 2 children in the camp, so that a piece of him could live on. Of course, Maggott, along with Meanie, eventually returned to life, thanks to a combination of magic and a techno-organic virus known as the transmode virus. The external known as Selene, also mentioned briefly in Cannonball's history last episode, was behind this resurrection, and was under her control as she and her army of formerly dead mutants attacked Utopia. Maggott was one of the few to survive this event, and was later seen alive and apparently acting of his own free will again in a few brief cameos. When the mutant island nation of Krakoa was founded, Maggott joined the group there at its opening. He experienced multiple true resurrections on Krakoa, which brought back Eenie, although that slug refused to talk to Maggott or even eat upon her return. With the help of Emma Frost, Japheth was able to discover that the original Eenie was still alive, and had grown to monstrous size, having been captured and experimented on by Mr. Sinister. The giant slug was now on its way to Krakoa to destroy the island. The telepathic bond between the 2 Eenies had driven both insane, and it took the death of the second Eenie, at the hand of Laura Kinney, aka Wolverine, to return things to normal. Or at least as normal as you can get when talking about sentient slugs living in your abdomen. Unfortunately, Laura's killing of Eenie, at the request of the creature, led to Laura and Maggott no longer talking to each other, even though they had been growing closer to one another up until that point. Maggott decided to relocate to New York soon thereafter, and has been seen post-Hellfire Gala at the Limbo Embassy run by Madeline Pryor, and again later in the Arctic Circle at X-Force's hideout. So, unlike some other mutants, we at least know he survived the Gala massacre and is just waiting for his next opportunity to shine. Our final 90s mutant to join the X-Men is Marrow. She was first seen in Cable number 15, created by writer Jeff Loeb and artist David Brewer, although she had no powers at the time and still went by her given name of Sarah. She was born looking different, with purple skin and pupilless red eyes, and was raised among the underground-dwelling mutants known as the Morlocks. Sometime after her first appearance, she and many other Morlocks were sent to another dimension by Mikhail Rasputin, brother of Colossus, sometime foe of the X-Men. In this other dimension, time flowed faster, and Mikhail raised the Morlocks who survived with a survival of the fittest attitude. Sarah's mutant powers manifested at this point, and her ability to grow and detach extra bones that protruded from various parts of her body led her to taking the name Marrow. While still attached, her extra bones could be used defensively as armor or as weapons, and when detached could be used as various tools or even forcefully propelled out as spiky projectiles. By the time that they returned to Earth, Marrow was now field leader of a team of former Morlocks going by the name Gene Nation, who became terrorists looking to punish humans that hated mutants. The group fought both the X-Men and Generation X, but were defeated for good when Storm tore out Marrow's heart, which had a time bomb wired to it by Marrow herself. Thanks to Marrow's healing factor, and the fact that she has 2 hearts, apparently necessary to compensate for her bone growth and detachment, she survived the experience. Marrow reunited with Callisto, the original leader of the Morlocks, and the pair continued to terrorize the human population, although Callisto tried to hold back Marrow's darkest impulses. When Callisto was hurt by a Prime Sentinel during the Operation Zero Tolerance storyline, she told Marrow to seek out help from the X-Men. And it was here when she joined the team and came under the mentorship of Wolverine, who had his own experience coming to terms with a darker side. However, when the X-Men reorganized, all the books had an in-story 6-month gap to allow massive changes to occur without having to go through each of those changes beat by beat in the books. Marrow was no longer on any of the teams. She was next seen brainwashed by S.H.I.E.L.D. and used as a sleeper agent to find and destroy rogue life model decoys. Peter Parker met her in her sleeper identity of Sarah Rushman, a fake last name given to her by S.H.I.E.L.D. When in that identity, she appeared as a normal human with regular skin and no protruding bones, but changed immediately when activated, which could be done by S.H.I.E.L.D. at will, or if she failed to be injected with certain medications in time. During one of those planned injections, Peter heard Sarah screaming, having just left her apartment, and returned as Spider-Man, stopping S.H.I.E.L.D. from injecting her. She reverted to her Marrow form and broke free of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s influence, in part thanks to Spider-Man's involvement. Marrow was one of the many mutants depowered in M-Day, the aftermath of Scarlet Witch's proclamation of "No more mutants," discussed in various episodes of this show, but eventually got her powers back through unwilling experimentation on her and her fetus. Yes, when she was abducted and taken in by Volga, a ruthless businessman looking to take depowered mutants, repower them, then brainwash them and sell them to various governments to use as Black Ops agents, Marrow was pregnant, father unknown. And it was the stem cells of the harvested fetus that were used to return Marrow's powers to her. She was rescued by Cable and joined his current X-Force team, though that book lasted only 15 issues. After that, she joined the Hellfire Club and worked for Emma Frost until the Krakoa Age, when she was pardoned of any crimes and lived peacefully on the island until the Hellfire Gala Massacre, where she, along with countless other mutants, was mind-controlled by Professor X into stepping into one of the teleportation gateways to take her off Earth, this being the only way Orcus would spare their lives. While most of the mutants who left this way ended up in the White Hot Room, the home of the Phoenix, Marrow and a few others ended up in Vanaheim and fought alongside Thor, Sif, and Angela of Asgard against the sorceress named Saturnine in the Realm of X miniseries, before returning to Earth. The fourth and final issue of that book came out in January of this year, and so far Sarah hasn't been seen since. But being one of the very few mutants alive on Earth right now, it's inevitable she return, eventually. So, we've wrapped up the 90s with a total of 7 characters covered for that decade. In the decade following, we have over 30 characters who joined the X-Men, most of whom fall in the lesser-known category. So it's going to take a few episodes to get through that time period. Be sure to come back for those, and in the meantime, if you have any other topics you'd like to hear me discuss, or general feedback, you can email those at welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown, Twitter @geektownpodcast, Mastodon @welcome-to-geektown @mastodon.social, or Blue Sky @welcome-to-geektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All their sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.